also like to start tonight by doing an acknowledgement that we are here meeting on the land of the Arakwal people of the Bundjalung Nation, that this is the land and always will be of Aboriginal people. I'd just like to say I was very honoured tonight that Sally here, our fabulous author, and it's Blues Fest. What I loved is that it was like people were trying to jump over the fence here just to get into your opening. They weren't on the list, but I'm sure I'm on the list. Which shows you how you're a big draw club. I met Sally many years ago now in one of the writing workshops that I run, and I was amazed by the stories that Sally was telling. Like, I was going, oh my God, this woman has lived a life. It was extraordinary as she shared, and Sally had this amazing way of sharing a story that made her really unforgettable. She was resolute in the telling, but also had this amazing sensitivity and had this ability to tell you a little bit more than what was comfortable for her. And the telling of a story isn't always about making herself look great, and to me that's what makes a great storyteller. So Sally has had an extraordinary life, and in Not Just the Wife of the General Manager, you will find out about the incredible places that Sally has been, the incredible transformations that she's had as a human being, and the process that has got Sally from where she was out in the middle of this amazing country, you know, sort of very much a woman pioneering on her own in a very much a man's world, you know, to here, you know, from working on Kerry Packer's farm to out there door knocking for me with the greens. That's a big jump. And I tell you what, Sally is a woman capable of very big jumps. About what pushed you through. Because I say to a lot of people, I remember saying to you, you really need to write a book. But most people don't. But you did. So what kicked you off from the musings and the idea into this actual hard copy?
Well, in 2013, I think it was, when I first moved to Byron Bay, a Jillaroo who had been working for us on Newcastle Waters knocked on my door. And I didn't know she was in Byron. She tracked me down, she knocked on the door, she came in with a little child on her hip, and she had this reference, handwritten reference, in the days when one wrote references, and it said, "To whom it may concern." And I had written a reference that said, this is to say that Fliss Rose had done a wonderful job, she was a good Jillaroo, and I'd highly recommend her to be employed in the future. And she had the original still, and she put it down on the counter in front of me, and she said, "Look who signed it." And it was signed Sally Warriner, the wife of the general manager. And she said, "What the fuck were you thinking?" That's when I decided to write a book.
It's complex when you write a book about your life, because as we know, all our lives touch very deeply on the lives of our family and other people that sometimes don't see it in the same way. And I'm interested in the book, you refer to your husband as the GM. We never get a name. Was that something you decided to do to keep some sort of anonymous quality in the book, or was that to create this sense of division?
Yes, it was a division. He was the general manager and I was the wife of. And I wanted to continue that theme. I was the wife and he was the GM until I wasn't.
And so did he like the book? Sally, has he got back to you and said, awesome? He'll be putting out his book called Not Just the General Manager of the Wife.
I need to say here I have two sons of mine down the front and a daughter-in-law, and they're the younger sons. The older sons are elsewhere. One's in Darwin and one's in the bush. But it's very nice to have them here, and it was very difficult writing a memoir and being truthful without offending anyone. And I hope that I've done that. I didn't want. My intention was not to offend anyone, and I did run quite a bit past all the kids before I actually published. First of all, I wanted to check that everything was correct with regard to all the plane crashes and all the emergencies and all the injuries and all the disasters that happen continuously. It's truthful. There's things obviously that I didn't say for various reasons, but I think I said the most of what I should have said, I hope, without offending anyone. Much.
You shared this story of, and it's in the book, so that's why I'm telling it, of you lost it as a mum, you lost it.
Oh yeah, poor Tom.
And is that you, Tom?
That's Tom.
Tom. You know this story, Tom, right? And I know, because you've milked it your whole life.
It's his party story.
Is it? Yeah. But Sally talks about how you got the shits with him because he wouldn't eat his peas, and she backhands him like we all want to, right? And
arrested today.
He goes flying, and he falls on the floor, and he's still complaining, so you drag him off to his room.
Screaming.
And finds out that he's got a broken arm, right? He's got the green stick fracture, which is not as bad as broken. Don't gasp, you've all done it. Look at them all pretending. All pretending they've never given their own kid a green stick. It was such an honest confession of what it felt like as a parent to lose it, and at the risk of not making yourself look like the perfect mother. Like, that's a big risk. And I thought, that's when I went, wow, that woman is really interesting. Are you aware of the risk you're taking when you share those stories? That it doesn't always make you look great, but it's your honest. It's a human honesty.
Yeah, but they're really good stories. I mean, everyone's going to want to read them.
I know. So how did he use the...
Well, his arms, all right, put your arm up, Tom. But I do remember we're 400 kilometres south of Catherine, and I was home, Ken was away, and I knew he had a green stick, and I plastered it. I had a little back slab I put on it, but I thought, I've got to get an X-ray just in case it's more than that and it's been displaced. So I left at 6 o'clock at night, and I drove for 4 hours to Catherine to go to the emergency. At midnight I call into Catherine Hospital emergency, and the guy on call says, yeah, it's Sal, it's a green stick, but we'll run it through the X-ray if you want us to. I said, yes, please. So X-ray, yes, it was fine. He put a different plaster, a bigger plaster on it, and sent us off home. And as I was walking out, I said to him, Doctor, do you think that break looks like a mother completely lost her shit and backhanded her kid, and he fell off the stool onto the floor, and that's how it happened, and then dragged him the full length of the veranda? Or do you think what happened was that the stool fell over and broke his arm? And he said, definitely the stool.
You okay, Tom?
We got to hospital at midnight, but you broke it about 8 a.m.
Tom, that's him, not just the son of the wife of the general manager. What was it that made you leave?
I think the final trigger, would have been in 1976. We had a journalist who came, and we were always, it was a Packer place, and it was the jewel in the crown. So we had a lot of journalists there a lot of the time, and there was a lot written about us and the property. And this journalist came, and he came and stayed in the house for 4 days and stayed in the guest wing, and I cooked and cleaned and had kids running back and forth and running the outfit that I was running from the kitchen and the office. I honestly thought that maybe he might have noticed or wanted to interview me about what I was doing. He was writing a coffee table book about the 10 major cattle properties in Australia. I looked after him, and I didn't get an interview, and I didn't ask for one, and he left. So when we had right of edit because he was Packer, and when the article for the coffee table book arrived, so I read through it, and it was 4.5 fool's cap glowing pages about what a fabulous manager and what a good bloke and how important he was and what a wonderful cattleman. And then I got 3 lines that said, Ken's attractive wife Sally spends her time in the homestead, looking after her children, entertaining and running a large garden. So that was it. That was the 4 lines that I got. So I walked into Ken's study when he came home that night. I put it on his desk and I said, if that's published, I'm suing for defamation. But it did go out and I didn't sue for defamation, but I walked 4 years later.
What was the one day, what looked like in your life when you were there with the kids?
There was never a one day. It was always, every day was different. But medical emergencies were all the time. And I was the nurse that was running the clinic. We had an Indigenous population of, a couple of hundred at times. I ran a clinic for the Aboriginal population, plus looked after all the staff. And they were always falling off the horses and splitting open their heads, and they all got Baku rot and bull rash and all of that. And so I was busy. I was busy nursing as well as mothering. I was on call 24 hours a day, and there were always fights. People were always splitting their heads open with nullas. They were kids falling off horses, broken bones, and I never thought twice about it because lots of women run the black box on stations.
I'd love you to tell us what you, Sally, are proudest of.
My family, without doubt. Everybody is, I guess, it's the same. I'm really proud that I, even though my marriage split up and that was very sad, that I have maintained a fantastic relationship with the 2 older boys, the stepsons, and all of their children and their wives. And my sons are, just really good blokes, good people, very kind and generous to me. And I have to say that the difference in the parenting of my boys and the way it was in those days is simply extraordinary. These blokes do half of everything, probably 60%, Aisha.
As it should be.
And I think it's the strong women coming along who say, hey, wait a minute, let's do this together. And my proudest achievement is my sons.
Oh, that's beautiful. There's nothing better than sons of strong women because they're not scared, but they know how to shut up and do what they're told. So do please, once again, hand for Sally and her fabulous book.